Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. There are moments in life that change everything, without warning, like an unexpected breath of air that blows through a silent house. For Emily and Michael Carter, that breath came in the form of a small stray dog. They'd lived in Chicago for 10 years, in a spacious, perfectly decorated house, but the interior was cold, almost devoid of emotion. Their conversations were limited to small talk, their eyes meeting without really seeing each other. The laughter had died down, replaced by silence and routine. Emily felt alone, even with Michael, and he, despite his love for her, no longer knew how to rekindle the old flame. Then one Saturday morning, while walking through the market, Emily spotted a small dog trembling in the cold. His brown eyes, full of fear but also incredible trust, met hers. It was a suspended moment. She immediately felt that this dog needed a home, and that they perhaps needed him as much as he needed them. Unknowingly, this little being would become the catalyst that would teach Emily and Michael patience, tenderness, and love again. He would transform not only their daily lives, but the way they saw each other. This dog, whom they would name Max, would enter their lives and change their course forever. Emily and Michael Carter lived in a spacious house in Chicago, but despite the comfort and the appearance of a perfect life, something was sorely missing. The walls were silent, the rooms too big for two hearts that no longer really spoke to each other. Every evening, after long days of work, they sat at the table, each absorbed in their own thoughts or their phones. Conversations were limited to small talk, "How was your day?" or "Want some coffee?" And then silence fell again. Emily felt this loneliness with painful intensity. She remembered their early years, when they laughed until they cried and shared every detail of their day. Today, that past seemed like another life. Michael, although he loved her deeply, no longer knew how to fill that void, and Emily, for her part, no longer knew how to rekindle the flame. She had tried to create simple moments to recreate this complicity, preparing dinner together, watching a movie, chatting about light things. But Michael always seemed elsewhere, and the weight of routine stifled any spontaneity. Emily felt there was no anger or resentment, only a quiet fatigue and a lack of warmth. It was in this heavy silence that she saw this little dog, a few days later, at the market. And without knowing that a simple gesture would change the course of their lives, Emily knew that they needed something, or someone, to learn to find each other again. That Saturday morning, Emily went to the market as usual, but her attention was caught by a small movement on the sidewalk. A dog, frail and trembling, was trying to protect itself from the icy wind. Its fur was matted and its rapid breathing betrayed fear and cold. Emily approached quietly, reaching out her hands silently. The dog looked at her with eyes full of suspicion, but also a strange trust. She felt an immediate connection, a silent call that told her she should help him. Without further thought, she took him in her arms. The dog, against all expectations, laid his head on her chest and seemed to finally relax. That moment marked the beginning of a transformation. Emily knew instantly that this little being needed a home, but that they needed him too. The presence of this fragile and vulnerable dog brought out emotions in her that she hadn't felt in a long time, a mixture of tenderness, protection, and joy. When she got home, she showed the dog to Michael. Michael, usually reluctant around animals, was initially surprised. He eyed the little creature cautiously and a touch worriedly, wondering if this new element in their lives would be too cumbersome. But seeing the dog's pleading, affectionate gaze, Michael felt an emotion he hadn't expressed in a long time, tenderness. Emily explained that they couldn't leave him outside, that the dog needed them, and that they, unknowingly, needed him. After a few minutes of consideration, Michael relented. He agreed to let them adopt him, and Emily felt a mixture of relief and excitement. The little dog had just found a home, and their lives were about to change forever. The little dog, whom they named Max, arrived at their home one sunny afternoon, and from the very first moment, he brought an unexpected energy into the house. Max was a Labrador Beagle mix, clumsy and curious, with a zest for life that seemed to contradict the sadness and silence that had pervaded the home for years. Emily watched Michael as he cautiously greeted her. At first, he remained guarded, worried about the responsibility the small animal represented. But Max, by hopping awkwardly and shaking his twitching little tail, brought a smile to Michael's face, a smile Emily hadn't seen in a long time. The house quickly transformed. Max's wild dashes across the living room, his barks for cuddles, and his little clumsiness broke the heavy silence. Every moment spent with him reminded Emily and Michael that life can be full of lightness and joy, even in the simplest moments. Emily felt an immediate connection with the dog. Walks, games, and cuddles became precious moments where she and Michael could reconnect without the burden of routine. Michael, surprisingly, took to Max's game, laughing at his antics and showing affection, almost as if rediscovering a part of himself he had forgotten. So Max wasn't just a four-legged companion, he became the center of their little universe, a catalyst who, by his mere presence, began to bring Emily and Michael closer together in ways they never would have imagined. The once silent house now echoed with laughter, footsteps, and small daily adventures. Max's arrival hadn't just brought joy, it had also revealed some previously buried tensions between Emily and Michael. The little dog, with his boundless energy, was testing their patience. Michael, often strict and methodical, sometimes grew frustrated by his clumsiness. He worried that the house was becoming too chaotic, and his impatience manifested itself in small remarks that Emily clearly perceived. Emily, for her part, felt overwhelmed by the constant attention Max required. She had to juggle work, home, and the dog's needs. Yet she also felt a deep sense of joy in watching him explore his new surroundings, discovering every nook and cranny, and demanding cuddles. Yet these moments of tension revealed something important. Despite the minor arguments or worries, they were both attached to Max, and this shared affection was beginning to create common ground. Every clumsy move on Max's part first provoked irritation, then laughter, then complicity. Emily noticed that Michael was laughing more often than before, that he was patient, and that he happily participated in these little routines, feeding Max, walking him, cuddling him after he had done something wrong. Michael, for his part, watched Emily and realized that she radiated tenderness and gentleness with the dog, a side he had almost forgotten. Little by little, Max became that meeting point between them. Tensions transformed into shared moments, frustrations into knowing laughter. And Emily understood that, for the first time in a long time, something, or someone, really brought them together. With Max, Emily, and Michael's daily lives began to change slowly, but profoundly. Morning walks became a ritual they shared almost without thinking about it. Michael got up early, a little surprised to find he looked forward to these moments. Emily, on the other hand, felt invigorated by these moments when the outside world seemed to disappear, giving way to Max's simple presence and their spontaneous exchanges. The conversations that emerged during these walks were different. They were sincere, relaxed, almost light-hearted, and yet full of long-buried emotions. Michael recalled childhood memories, plans he'd never shared, and Emily found herself listening with renewed interest. Max, running around them or trotting alongside them, seemed to amplify this closeness, like a silent bond uniting them. Simple actions, like making breakfast together or cleaning the house after Max's little mishaps, became opportunities for cooperation and bonding. Emily noticed that Michael was attentive to her actions, anticipating her needs, and effortlessly, they began to support each other again. Max also had a surprising effect on their emotions. Where previously fatigue or irritation might have dominated, he infused a breath of joy and patience. Michael laughed more easily, Emily worried less, and they both rediscovered the pleasure of small moments together. Little by little, Emily realized that Max wasn't just a dog, he was the catalyst for their rebirth. He brought them back to basics, reminding them that love and connection are built through simple gestures and shared moments, and that life can be sweet when we take the time to reconnect. One afternoon, while Emily and Michael were walking Max in the park, the little dog suddenly disappeared into the trees. They were immediately overcome with fear. Emily's heart sank, and Michael, usually so calm, began to panic. They searched frantically, calling his name and trawling every path, but Max seemed to have vanished. Those hours of uncertainty were trying. Emily realized, with painful clarity, how indispensable this little being had become. He was no longer just a dog, he was the link that reminded them to laugh together, to talk, and to share simple moments. Michael, who tried to hide his fear, showed for the first time in a long time a sincere vulnerability in front of Emily. When they finally found Max, trembling but safe and sound, they were both overcome with emotion. Michael held him in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time, while Emily gently stroked his head, her heart filled with relief. In that moment, they understood that Max had not only brought them joy, but had also revealed the depth of their feelings for each other. This ordeal made them realize the importance of every moment they shared. The little dog had shown, without a word, that love and complicity could be reborn, even after years of silence and routine. As the weeks went by, Max became a true master at turning small gestures into moments of happiness. Emily and Michael discovered that caring for him, feeding him, walking him, or simply cuddling him, brought them closer together without them even realizing it. The everyday arguments gradually faded away, replaced by exchanges of knowing smiles and thoughtful gestures. Every bit of progress Max made, whether it was learning to stay calm when they had guests over or not jumping on the couch, became a small victory they celebrated together. Emily noticed Michael becoming more patient, more attentive, and he savored these successes as if they were their own. Emily, for her part, found herself feeling calmer, gentler, and more understanding, just like the patience Max inspired in them. The house now echoed with laughter and small daily celebrations, a "well done, Max," after good behavior, a shared laugh when the dog did something innocent. These simple moments became precious landmarks, moments of complicity they hadn't experienced in a long time. Max had achieved what neither Emily nor Michael would have thought possible. He had retaught their relationship how to work together, how to communicate without judgment, and how to appreciate the small joys of everyday life. He had become a living link, a constant reminder that love is built in the details, in the attention paid to each other, and in tenderness offered unconditionally. As the months passed, Emily and Michael realized that their relationship had changed profoundly thanks to Max's walks, games, and time spent together with the dog were no longer just routines, they had become special moments that allowed them to reconnect, share, and reconnect with forgotten emotions. Michael, who had often withdrawn into his work and routines, showed a tender and caring side Emily hadn't seen in years. He now delighted in surprising Emily with small gestures, making coffee in the morning, looking at her with a knowing smile, or simply sitting down next to her to pet Max and chat. Emily, for her part, felt free to share her thoughts, worries, and joys without fear of judgment. Max acted like an invisible thread connecting their hearts. Every laugh they shared over his mischief, every hug he craved, strengthened their bond. Emily and Michael realized they had learned to love each other again, not through grand gestures, but through the small acts of kindness and patience they had developed together. The dog had brought their home back to life, but more importantly, their relationship. He had reminded Emily and Michael that true love never truly disappears, it can simply fall asleep, and that with time, tenderness, and a little complicity, it can be reborn stronger and more sincere than ever. Max was no longer just a dog, he had become the beating heart of the house. Emily and Michael realized that he had transformed more than just their daily lives, he had changed the way they saw and understood each other. Where once silence and routine had reigned, the house now echoed with laughter, hurried footsteps, and spontaneous little adventures. Every morning, watching Max run around the living room, his ears fluttering in time with his clumsy hops, reminded Emily and Michael how joyful life could be even in its simplicity. Walks, once monotonous, were now moments of sincere connection and genuine exchange. The dog had also taught them attention and patience. Michael, who had previously been distant in certain situations, found himself observing Emily with a newfound tenderness. Emily, for her part, was rediscovering the gentleness and understanding that had always been deep within her. Max had become the silent link that brought them together, made them smile together, and reminded them that love is built through everyday gestures and the attention paid to each other. They realized that this little dog, whom they had welcomed almost by chance, had saved their relationship. Without a word, he had taught them to reconnect, to appreciate every moment, and to find in complicity and tenderness the strength to rebuild what they had thought lost. Max was no longer just their dog, he was the living symbol of their rebirth and their newfound happiness. Today, Emily and Michael watched Max run around the garden, the sun gently caressing his golden fur. They smiled at each other, complicit, with a tenderness and serenity they hadn't known in years. The house, once silent and cold, now vibrated with laughter, hugs, and small shared routines that had regained their meaning. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was sincere and profound. Max had taught them to rediscover love in simple gestures, a glance exchanged, an outstretched hand, a shared smile. Thanks to him, Emily and Michael had rediscovered the patience, tenderness, and complicity that seemed to have disappeared from everyday life. This little dog, who had arrived in their lives by chance, had been much more than a four-legged companion. He had been the catalyst for their rebirth. He had shown them that love, even when it seems extinguished, can be rekindled with attention, consistency, and a little gentleness. Watching Max play carefreely, Emily and Michael realized their lives had changed forever. Their home was now a place of joy, tenderness, and renewed complicity. And silently, they thanked this courageous and affectionate little being who had, unknowingly, saved their relationship and taught their hearts to love each other fully again.